Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Development Control and Regulatory Board. This day, the 12th of November 2020. As usual, this meeting is being broadcast live to the public. For those not able to watch the footage live, the webcast will be available for viewing on YouTube after the meeting. Due to current situation, all other members of the board and officers presenting today are joining online. Can I please ask that all officers and members mute their microphones until they wish or are invited to speak. When you are speaking, please turn your video on. I understand that Mr. Parton is substituting today for Mr. Phillimore. Ewan will now read out a list of names who are to be on the committee today, just to check that they're here and present and ready to go. So over to Ewan for that.
Okay, the first name on the list is Mr. Bentley. Mr. Bentley, I think I've seen you on the call. Are you there and can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Ewan. I can both see and hear you.
Brilliant, thank you. Mr. Charlesworth, are you there? Mr. Michael Charlesworth, are you on the call? Can you hear us? No? Okay, I'll come back. And Mr. Coxon's here. Mr. Crooks, are you there? Can you hear me? Mr. Bill Crooks, are you there? Okay, I'll move on.
He's on song.
Mr. Gillard, are you on the call? Can you hear me? Mr. Gillard, I think you've got your microphone off. Can you turn your microphone on? Mr. Gillard? Mr. Harrison, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, good afternoon, Ewan. I can see and hear you. Thank you.
Mr. Gamble, can you hear me? Are you there?
Yes, I can hear and see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Licorice?
Yes, thank you, Ewan.
Mr. Parton, are you there? I can't see you on the call, but you may be there. Are you there, Mr. Parton? No. Mrs. Richards, are you there?
I'm there, Ewan, and I can see and hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sheehan, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here, Ewan. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Maggie Wright?
Good afternoon, Ewan. Yes, I'm here and I can see you. Thank you.
And Mr. Michael Wyatt?
Yes, thank you, Ewan. I'm here. And I can see everybody, yeah.
Okay. We do seem to have a core of members who are on the call and able to hear me, but I'll just go back over some of the ones that we weren't able to get hold of.
Mr. Crooks is on mute.
Mr. Charlesworth, are you on the call now?
Finally, yes.
Thank you. Good to hear from you. Mr. Crooks, are you there? Mr. Bill Crooks? Are you at the meeting? No? Okay. Mr. Gillard, can you hear us?
Yeah, present, Ewan.
That's good. Excellent. Okay. Well, I think we're okay to continue, so I'll hand over back to you, Mr. Coxon.
Thank you, Ewan. Thank you for doing that. We turn to the agenda then members. Item number 1 is the minutes. I propose that the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of October 2020 are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Are we all agreed with that?
I'll second and agree, Chairman.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Item number 2 then is questions. No questions have been received from the public. Item 3, there are no questions from members at this time. Item 4, there are no urgent items. Item 5, declarations of interest. It is noted that all members who are also members of a parish council, district council or liaison committee will have a personal interest in those applications which relate to areas covered by those authorities. Are there any further interests that anyone would like to declare at this time? The silence I take as no. Item 6, petitions. There are no petitions under Standing Order 35. Moving on then to item number 7, which is the main purpose of why we're here today, for the planning application for a County Council Waste Transfer Station, Plot 6, Interlink Way, South Barden Industrial Estate, Barden Hill. Nick Thomas is going to present this report this afternoon. Nick will be followed by Andrew Harper, who will be speaking on behalf of the applicant. So, Nick, are you there to do your presentation?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon, members. So this application has been submitted on behalf of the County Council and is for a waste transfer station with associated infrastructure and engineering works at Plot 6, Barden Industrial Estate. The slide in front of you is an aerial photograph showing the extent of the site and in its context. It's located within the Barden Industrial Estate, and as you can see, the site is set amongst a cluster of existing industrial buildings, and that includes the large recently constructed Amazon distribution warehouse to the west of the site, and also the Cliff Hill Quarry, which is to the east of the site. Land to the south of the railway line is showing not developed, but actually that's under construction for a B8 storage and distribution unit, and has permission also for general industrial use. The village of Ellistown is just out of shot to the west of the slide, and to the north of that is Hugglescote and also Colville, which is about 2.5 miles away. The site itself, you can see, is edged red, and that's approximately 1.8 hectares, and that forms part of the last remaining plot on the Barden Industrial Estate site. The other adjacent plot is also in County Council ownership, and that's a similar size, around 1.8 hectares, but that adjacent site is not subject to this application. So just some further context to the site setting. This site is accessed via the Interlink Way South road, just to the north, which you can see on the plan. There's a private railway line that runs to the south of the site, which links to the quarry, and that transports aggregate. You can see from this plan that the site sits on the border of both North West Leicestershire District Council and Hinckley and Bosworth Borough Council, and the dotted line shows where the boundary runs. And the relevance to this is that we've consulted both authorities as part of this planning application. Just a few photographs next then. This just shows the site looking in a westerly direction. This is a view of the site looking southwest, and the shot showing the site frontage looking in a southeasterly direction. This particular slide shows nearby footpaths. The footpath N47 runs adjacent to the railway line to the south of the site, and that footpath, and in fact all footpaths, are unaffected by the proposal. This next slide shows the site layout, and you can see that the main waste transfer building is located to the eastern part of the site. This will be used to treat non-hazardous waste. The hazardous waste will be stored in enclosures to the south, that's indicated there as storage bays. And other ancillary features throughout the site include a site office and welfare building. There are some sprinkler tanks just to the north of the waste transfer site. You can also see on the plan the car parking area and the HGV car parking. And there is a weighbridge both for vehicles coming into the site and exiting the site. And you can see also the site access is shown to the top left-hand side of the slide. So this next slide shows the building's elevations. The building would measure 36.5 metres by 79.4 metres and will be 14.7 metres high to the ridge. The building will be clad with metal sheeting to the walls and steel profiled roofing to the roof with 26 skylights, which you might just be able to make out on the images. The bottom slide, you can see where the HGV entrances would be formed, and there's 6 of those. This slide is the external storage bays, which I've showed you on one of the previous slides to the south of the site. There will be 4 covered bays and 2 uncovered bays, and they would measure in total 67.6 metres by 10.6 metres and be 9.4 metres high. And these, as I say, will be stored for the hazardous waste of up to 50 tonnes. This next slide is the landscaping plan, and you can probably just about see the contoured lines around the edge of the slide, and that's showing earth bunding. In terms of the landscaping, they're proposing wildflower grass mixes, shrub planting, and also a mix of large feathered and heavy standard trees onto the site frontage. And finally, in terms of the slides, this plan is taken from the Leicestershire Minerals and Waste local plan, and the hatched areas around the town centres of Hinckley, Colville, Loughborough and the city of Leicester are showing the broad locations for where this type of strategic waste facility should be located. Also on this plan is an indication of the approximate site location adjacent to Colville, and that's demonstrating that the site that's proposed is within the broad location, which is what the Leicestershire Minerals and Waste local plan envisages this type of facility to be located. Okay, so that's the slides. In terms of the proposal, the application, as I say, has been submitted by the County Council in its statutory waste disposal capacity. The facility is required to ensure that it discharges the statutory responsibility of the Waste Authority, and that includes a requirement to reduce the use of landfill to dispose of waste. And in order to redirect waste away from landfill to allow it to be treated and either reused, recycled or recompost, the waste first needs to be bulked so that it can be efficiently transported elsewhere. All the County Council's current waste transfer sites are operating at capacity, and as a result, the applicant has advised us that has prompted the need for this new facility in this location. And they've also advised that they believe this is the right location, both from a planning and an operational perspective. So the proposal is to create a waste transfer station, and it needs to be operated 24 hours per day, 7 days per week. But the main hours of use will be during normal daytime hours. The type of waste will be controlled by a permit which will be issued by the Environment Agency, but it's expected that that will include all types of household waste, such as that collected by the district councils at the curbside, as well as waste from recycled household waste facilities. The permit issued by the Environment Agency is expected to allow a wide range of waste, and that includes commercial wastes, and this will allow flexibility and resilience in the way the County Council deals with its waste. In reality, most of that will be the typical black bag type curbside waste being processed on the site. And a key point that the applicant, I think, wants to stress is that this waste is already being taken to other facilities, so it's already being transported on the roads, the road network. But this facility, as I say, is intended to provide greater resilience in terms of how the waste will be dealt with. So just in terms of the main planning issues, I won't go through everything that's in the report, but you'll see in terms of policy that we're content that this proposal accords with the main policies relating to this site from a strategic point of view, and that's policies W3 and W5, because the site is located in an area that is identified as a broad location for treating strategic waste facilities. In highway safety terms, the applicant has submitted a transport assessment and no adverse impacts have been identified. And we have received some objections within the report, you'll see, and concerns are raised about HGV movement and also parking problems on the industrial roads. Some of these movements will be from refuse collection vehicles who are already using existing local roads. The larger articulated bulk loaders are expected to use the strategic road network. No objections have been raised by the County Highway Authority, but we do have a representative on the line who, if there are any questions come up, could answer questions a little bit later. But no objections have been raised, and they consider it's a sustainable location and also it's policy compliant in accordance with the plan. They are recommending conditions, which you'll see as part of the report, to secure an amended travel plan and to secure on-site car parking, HGV parking, and also cycle parking before first occupation. The report goes through in some detail the impacts of noise, dust and odour, and detailed information has been submitted by the applicant about how these impacts will be managed, and most of those will be dealt with through the Environment Agency's permit. The District Council's environmental health officers of both authorities have looked at this and neither have raised an objection. You'll see we're recommending conditions to deal with noise and also ground contamination. No flood risk issues have been identified, but we do have a condition on there to deal with surface water management. In terms of landscaping and ecology, as you've seen from the photographs, this is a vacant plot, but it was always intended to be developed for employment purposes, and it does have a historic planning permission on this site. Because the site has sat undeveloped for a while and has been largely unmanaged, it has begun to naturalise and has some ecological value. The intention is that will be compensated for both by the planting that's proposed on the site, but also a contribution towards the National Forest Company for off-site planting. And that's dealt with within paragraph 65 of the report and also condition 22. So I think that's all I wanted to say at this stage. You'll see that we're recommending that planning permission to be granted subject to conditions. We're content that the scheme complies with policy. I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for your presentation. We have a speaker, as I said, Andrew Harper, who is speaking on behalf of the applicant. So I'll ask Andrew to come in next, and then we can ask questions of if there are any on Andrew's submission, and then we'll go back to Nick to if there are any overall questions that need to be asked. So over to you, Andrew Harper.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to use the time today to explain a little bit about why we feel the site is so important for Leicestershire, and why not only is a waste transfer station needed, but why that's the best place for it to be. Now, in terms of the need for a site, really there's three main things. There's the capacity that we need, there's resilience, and there's flexibility. Now, in terms of capacity, obviously, as the Waste Disposal Authority for Leicestershire, we do have a legal requirement to dispose of waste that is collected from households. Now, historically, this has been done through landfills in and around Leicestershire, but over time, we've obviously moved further and further away from the use of landfill towards treatment instead. Now, that's all well and good, but we need a way to get the waste to the treatment facilities. We have an existing waste transfer station at Loughborough and one at Whetstone, but they're both quite small and they're already at capacity. So we need another way to get waste to where it needs to go, and that's a new waste transfer station, which is larger in size. really, through doing this, it's the only way that we can continue to move waste up the waste hierarchy, which, as I'm sure you know, has landfill at the very bottom and prevention at the very top. With a waste transfer station, it allows us to take the waste from landfill and progressively move up the hierarchy towards that sort of treatment and composting side of things. In terms of resilience, disposal sites that we use are subject to closures, either weather affected landfill sites, for example. There might be closures for maintenance at some of the treatment facilities we use. And when that happens, we have to rely on our broader network to transfer waste to other sites. Now, again, as I say, with Whetstone and Loughborough already being quite full, it makes it progressively more and more difficult to do as our options for disposal diminish over time. So this site will give us much needed resilience. It also gives us flexibility because the world of waste, as you know, doesn't stay still. And it's not a static industry. Government are bringing through a raft of new legislation in the next few years. So it'll really give us that floor space we need to react to that flexibility and give the services to Leicestershire residents that they need. In terms of the site itself, Barden for us really ticks all the boxes, and it was really the only site that did so after having quite an extensive site search, both from a policy point of view, which I'll leave to the report, and from an operational point of view, where clearly it's centred in a really good location in that it's near to the main urban areas of Colville, Loughborough, the northern side of Hinckley, and so on. And that's obviously where the waste is arising from. But it's also got really good road access to the A511 and then onto the M1 from there. So it gives us great flexibility to move waste to where it needs to go. There is transport assessment. I'm sure you've had a good look through that, and you'll see that there's not expected to be any significant impacts as the vehicle numbers are relatively low and are spread across the working day. And of course, as it's our site, we do have a certain amount of influence on the vehicles that do visit the site, and we can ensure that they're using appropriate routes. In terms of the facility itself, we do feel that it is in keeping with the industrial estate. To the untrained eye, it would look very much like any other distribution warehouse. Indeed, if you look at an overhead, the building itself is actually quite a lot smaller than many of those surrounding it. And we're also very confident of our control mechanisms, having had experience of running 2 waste transfer stations already. We do know how to operate them. And of course, the EA will undertake rigorous checks of our permit application to make sure we've got the appropriate controls in place to make sure that the site is kept clean and tidy and doesn't have any impact on its surroundings. So in summary, there is really a great need for a new facility. We've looked across Leicestershire, and this site really is the best site by quite some margin. We think it's really well suited from a policy and an operational point of view. And we think that it will be a modern site with modern technology and all the controls needed to keep it that way. And with that, I really do hope that the board will support our application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Andrew. I've got a list of speakers, but are there any members that want to ask any questions of Andrew at this time, and then we'll move on, obviously, to the main questions. Any questions on what Andrew said?
Yes, please.
Sean.
Andrew, hi.
Hi.
Something Mr. Thomas said, I don't know if you referred to it in your presentation, but hazardous waste, how does it arise? How much of it is there in relation to the non-hazardous waste, and how will it be dealt with?
The hazardous waste element is actually a very, very small part of what we do. We are responsible as the Waste Disposal Authority for disposing of clinical waste. So this is the waste that districts collect from people's homes of a clinical nature. And at the moment, that waste is stored and transferred on from our Whetstone transfer station. So again, from the point of view of flexibility and resilience, we would like to have the opportunity to manage that waste as well. The external bays that Mr. Thomas was referring to, we are looking to use those for a mixture of inert wastes, but also hazardous waste, by which we mean WE waste, so waste electrical and electronic equipment waste, and that would come from our recycling and household waste sites. So the hazardous waste if I may be so bold, perhaps sounds a bit worse than it is, in that it's already waste that we have in the system. It's waste that the districts are collecting from the curbside, and it's waste that we're collecting at the RHWSs, and it's just about building in the ability to use Barden to move that material around. But the vast majority of the waste will be residual waste from the curbside, so your black bag waste.
Thank you. Sean, are you okay?
Yeah, I'll save me the questions for the officers.
Yes, of course. Yes. Anyone else questions for Andrew? No. Thank you. Right, we'll move on then. Michael Wyatt, you're 50% ward member, so I'd better come to you first, Michael, if you want to say something.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I do have some major concerns about this proposal. I mean, there's quite a lot of local businesses have expressed their concerns already, and they've already sent them to the district council and also the county council. The area really I have major concerns with is, and I do take exception to the officer turning around about the traffic situation, because any additional traffic on Barden Road will have a massive impact on the local residents. We're already suffering from major congestion daily on Barden Road, and all you're going to do is be adding to that problem. And the air pollution we are suffering on Barden Road in the local area is absolutely horrendous. I mean, it is absolutely horrendous, and people's lives are being put at risk because of the pollution levels at the moment in that area. And all you're going to be doing is adding and making a toxic atmosphere in that area, but allowing such a facility in that area, I think. And I am really concerned about, one, the traffic, and two, the odour problems, because we have massive odour problems from Barden Quarry and other facilities, Cliff Quarry as well, just down the road. And they are adding to the major decline of the area. And I think, and I really find it very difficult to be able to support this proposal, because I know the local residents are up in arms that this is being even considered in that area, it being that we've got the major problems we have at the moment. So, I mean, one question I would like to ask the officers, if they could, I did mention, and the council have sort of pursued the climate change emergency when we've all signed up to it. But, is the facility actually going to be carbon neutral? Is it actually going to be not adding to the already problem we've got? Because this council, like any other council, you're good at talking about the climate emergency, but when it comes to actually putting it into practice, you fail. You fail every time to do it. So that's why I'd like that question answered. But I think I've covered most of the points I want to cover. Odour is a major issue, and also traffic congestion, and you add into that problem, and the pollution levels and the air quality, that is a major issue. So if the officer could come back on the carbon neutral facility, if it's possible to do that, because I think you should do it. Absolutely, you should push as hard as you can to make it carbon neutral. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, I'll just come back on probably Nick or Andrew. I'm not quite sure which one or both of you can help Michael with that.
Chairman, if I could just try and attempt to do that. The situation is the application is proposing solar panels as part of the application, so that in itself will generate renewable energy. It's got roof lights as part of the building, so in terms of the use of power to light the building, that's obviously much more efficient than if that wasn't proposed in the first place. As I understand it, the applicant is intending for the facility to be operationally neutral in terms of the carbon emissions, but we don't have, that's not a policy requirement for this application that it has to be carbon neutral. Clearly, as an applicant, we have a duty to make sure that the environmental impact of facilities like this is the amount of energy that it uses is minimal, and I think that is the intention of the applicant. It may be that, I don't know if you want to ask the applicant, obviously still on the call, whether he wants to confirm that is the intention and whether that is the proposal in terms of it being carbon neutral. I know normally we don't normally go back to the applicant in terms of the questions. I suppose that's a matter for you, Chair.
Well, we'll see if Andrew can answer it. Andrew, are you able to answer that question?
Yes, I am. I think in terms of the build itself, it would be very difficult to make it carbon neutral because of the nature of the materials we're using. But certainly in terms of the operation thereafter, we are very keen to do whatever we can. I am a team manager from an environment branch after all, to do what we can to limit the impacts from a carbon perspective. At a practical level, that is things like having EV charging points on the site for the staff to use. It's things like the solar panels that Nick's already mentioned. But the other thing to bear in mind as well is that this waste and the vehicle movements associated with that waste are already out in Leicestershire. When you put waste through a waste transfer station rather than a direct delivery to a waste disposal point, it's a more efficient form of transport. So rather than having sort of 3 district collection vehicles travelling to wherever it needs to travel to, there it might be 1 articulated vehicle moving to a disposal point. So you're reducing your sort of carbon footprint from the vehicle movements, as well as putting the waste into a facility that is hopefully better from a carbon perspective than the landfill. So whilst we haven't worked the maths through yet, I think we can be confident that there will be some positives that come out of having this facility.
Can I come back, Chairman?
Go on then.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just, is it possible that the officers could look at the idea of having a condition that the traffic cannot use Barden Road in a residential area, and they have to go to the motorway on the, to the past the quarry to the right and not going down to the left into the town centre? Is that a possibility to reduce the traffic congestion and also the pollution along that road? And also, like I think I've repeated that before, that everyone's good at talking about tackling climate change, and oh yes, we're keen to do this, we're keen to do that, but in reality, if you really wanted to do something, you would have put it in the proposal and you'd be quite excited and say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I don't get any of that. So I don't think you're serious at all. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Nick, are you able to answer that on Barden Road? That question on.
I might, in a second, I might bring in my colleague from the Highway Authority, but
yeah.
Just in terms of, we know from the proposal that the traffic, both bringing in waste and taking out waste, will come from different sources and different locations. So the vehicles bringing in waste, the curbside collection vehicles, will be coming from different locations, and some will inevitably come from urban areas. And the vehicles leaving the site, as I understand, they'd be of a more the larger articulated vehicles and would take the waste to further afield potentially. So they'll go through different routes and different locations. We have had routing conditions as part of Section 106 agreements on other types of permissions, for instance, some of the quarry applications that we've dealt with in the past. The difficulty with this is because there are a nature of vehicles coming from different locations, that will be quite tricky to apply and to enforce. And so I think I'll be reluctant to do that, because I'm not sure whether we could come up with a phrase of wording that would still be allow the applicant to work in a way that they need to do operationally. I'm going to ask my colleague Rebecca Hanson from Highways just to come in to see whether she wants to add anything on the routing side.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nick. I think what we need to consider is if we restricted the routes that the vehicles would take, we will potentially be increasing the length of the journeys and the routes to the site. So we may just be causing more of a problem, I suppose, in terms of emissions. In terms of congestion on the 511, the majority of the movements are predicted within the submitted transport assessment to take place outside of the peak hours where we see congestion on the network. So the applicant's only predicting 8 movements in the morning peak hour and 14 in the evening peak hour. The majority of the movements take place outside of the peaks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Just Chairman, just one little point I want to make.
Go on then.
The officer just mentioned one word which I'm finding very, very difficult to accept, and is that it's predicted. It's time we had some actual information, not predictive information. It's like air quality. It's all about predicted. We need actual factual information. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Michael. The next speaker I've got then is Sean Sheehan. Sean?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Probably one for Rebecca. Could you give a breakdown of all the vehicle movements on site? You've given a figure of 148 for the HGV movement, so I'm interested in a breakdown of all vehicles. And can you also explain what's coming in from out of county? Why we're taking that?
Nick or Andrew again, I suppose, for this.
Chairman, again, it's probably one for Rebecca. I think she's probably got the transport assessment to hand and probably quote back from that.
Yeah, fine.
Okay, thank you. Happy to answer that question.
Thank you.
In terms of the types and number of movements, the transport assessment includes for 26 movements by car. That's 13 movements into the site, 13 out of the site. 72 movements by refuse collection vehicles. 26 by roll-on, roll-off vehicles. 12 movements by miscellaneous third-party waste carriers, and 38 movements by articulated vehicles. In terms of their distribution, incoming trips are anticipated to come from 5 districts within Leicestershire. These are Hinckley and Bosworth, Charnwood, North West, Blaby and Oby and Wigston. By roll-on, roll-off vehicles from Loughborough, Colville, Shepshed, Mount Sorrel and Barwell recycling and household waste sites. And the waste out from the site is anticipated to travel by articulated vehicle to Coventry, Stoke, Coatesbatch and other locations within the vicinity.
So that explains it. There's nothing coming in from out of county. We send out. It's everything going out that goes out of county.
That's correct.
Right,
it comes in, it's bulked, and it goes out to those destinations.
Okay, happy with that, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Maggie Ride.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was really following on from a point Sean has already made about the hazardous waste, and I take the point that was given and the answer given about it being already in the system sort of thing, but really shouldn't this be future proofed and safeguarded for the future? Because when I read through the conditions, I couldn't see anything or policy that dealt with hazardous waste. So that was my first point. If I may, Chair, just add a couple more. It was really about the representations that were made and the conditions, and we've just talking about the transport assessment, and I note that some of the parishes made reference to additional signage and weight restrictions, etc. So I was keen to know if that had actually been added in somewhere and taken into account. And finally, one thing I just didn't understand, and if I could have clarification of, there was a statement that said from some objectors or representations saying the building would be out of keeping with the wider industrial estate. It does not fit. And I'm just querying, if the building actually fits into the current landscape. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Maggie. Nick, are you able to help with that? Or?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Chairman. So in terms of hazardous waste, so that the controls that govern how that's the amount of material and the types of material is through the Environment Agency's permit. So they would monitor the facility and make sure they have enforcement powers to make sure that that's complied with. So it's all governed through the Environment Agency. That's why we don't have planning conditions to deal with that, because that would overlap and to step on to their toes in terms of the powers that they have. In terms of I'm going to come to the third point now, in terms of the building being in keeping. So this is, as I briefly touched upon in the introduction, this is an entirely industrial area. There's industrial buildings all around the site, both sides, the front and the back of the site, including large storage and distribution unit on the other side of the railway line. The setting is entirely in that employment industrial type environment, and this is an industrial building. It's a functional industrial building. It won't win any awards for design, but then none of the others do in that area. The mitigation factor is well landscaped. There's going to be trees all along the site frontage, so the elements that you can see from any public areas will be well screened, both in terms of bunding and the planting with trees and shrubs that's proposed. And it's entirely appropriate in our view for the setting. And just finally, you spoke there about weight restricted signage. I understand another signage on the highways. I'm going to ask Rebecca just to come in on that. My understanding is there are existing controls in place, and that we are not recommending that additional controls be applied through conditions, but I'll just ask Rebecca to comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. That's correct. We can find no justification for requiring any additional signage or additional weight restrictions in addition to what is already out there on the network.
If I may just come back, Chair, I think from a local point of view, I take what Rebecca's just said, but and what Councillor White has really said. You know, local people know their area very well, and it just concerns me if they are requesting extra signage, you know, what harm it would do to actually provide it. But thank you, Chair, for the questions.
Okay, thank you. Next on the list is Mr. Crooks. Mr. Crooks have asked me to ask you at what point did you arrive at in the meeting? I think it's crucial because of whether you were online at the time of this item being discussed.
Chairman, for some reason I lost the signal after about 5 minutes, but I was able to get back in again after another 5 minutes or so. So I did miss 5 minutes right at the very beginning. But if I may ask some questions.
Please do.
Yeah, following up on Councillor Wyatt's comments, I would have thought that we'd have had, you know, having signed up to the climate change policy, I would have thought that the county would have almost insisted, being it's their own project, putting solar panels on the roof for a start off. That would have been an easy but we'll see what Nick's got to say about that. The other thing to do with lorries, it's too much of a wish that they would look at using the railway, which it runs right next door. And I know it's a private line, but I'm sure there could have been some arrangement. The original sweetener for the whole site, when it was given permission, I was chair of planning at that time at Hinckley, and that was that a lot of the stuff was going to come in on the railway. But obviously that's going to cost, and I can understand that they probably don't want to do that. The other worry I've got is that where it runs, the A511/A50 runs through Markfield. For the last 5 or 6 years, it's been right at the top of our pollution area for Hinckley and Bosworth. It's right on the limit anymore, and it will go over the top. So this can only make it worse. And like I say, it's a shame that it can't go on the railway. But apart from that, Chair, I haven't got anything more to say. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Well, last speaker I've got on my list is Janice Richards. Janice, are you there?
I am, Chairman, thank you. Mine is just a query. It's on page 27, item 19. It's got measures should be taken to ensure that the operation carried out on the site do not give rise to noise, nuisance or disturbance in the locality. Such measures shall include, and then it's got A, the effective silencing and maintenance of all engines, exhaust, machinery, plant and equipment, whether fixed or not. How will this be achieved to effectively silence engines and exhaust? I'm not quite understand the wording of it, so could I just have it explained to me, please, Chairman?
Yeah, Nick, are you able to do that?
I'm sorry, Chairman, I just missed the start of that question. Could I ask Mrs. Richards just to repeat? I'm sorry about that.
Not Maggie. Janice, sorry.
Do you want me to repeat it, Chairman?
Please, if you would, yeah.
Yeah, it's noise, and it's item 19, Nick. And it's got measures should be taken to ensure that the operations carried out on the site do not give rise to noise, nuisance or disturbance in the locality. Such measures shall include A, the effective silencing and maintenance of all engines, exhausts, machinery, plant and equipment, whether fixed or mobile. Silencing and maintenance of engines. I'm just querying, so can I just have it explained to me a little bit better, please? Thank you, Chairman.
Nick, did you catch that this time?
Yes, I did. Thank you. So you're referring to condition 19, I think, which is on page.
I am, Nick.
15. Yeah. So that condition is seeking to make sure that the activities that take place on the site do not cause rise to those issues you've talked about, particularly, the noise issues in terms of nuisance and disturbance in the residents. And that in some regards, they're informative. They're fairly they're non-specific elements in terms of the exact measures that take place to how those elements can be complied with. But what it does is allows us to have control to make sure that the applicant takes account of those types of impacts from engines and exhaust and plant and equipment and machinery, so that they do silence and put measures in place to make sure that the impacts are minimised. I think what we need to remember is this location is set amongst industrial buildings in terms of it's screened by existing buildings, and the proximity to residential properties is considerable. This is a belt and braces approach in terms of making sure that any impacts from those types of equipment are controlled. If we were to get complaints, and that was to find that, some of the engines or exhaust or plant is making noise that's causing disturbance, it gives us an extra layer of control, so we can go back to the applicant and to secure improvements and to address any ongoing issues. And what I'd also say is this is in addition to the controls in place by the environmental permit, which would provide an additional level of controls to make sure that the activities taking place are satisfactory from an environmental point of view. So it's a belt and braces approach, this one. It's something that we can use to as a tool to go back to the applicant in the event of any problems.
Thank you. Can I just say through the chair,
yeah.
It's just a bit strange how it's actually wording, like almost like silencing of engines. And I thought, well, you can't silence engines. So I think the wording of it was a bit confusing, especially for myself. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis.
Chairman, sorry, I don't know if you want me to come back just on a point made by Mr. Crooks a few moments ago.
Yeah, please do.
He raised a couple of points there, which I just wanted to come back on. So, First of all, he spoke about the impact on climate change, and we briefly talked about this a few moments ago. Solar panels are proposed as part of this development, so that's the first thing to say. But there are a number of other measures, such as electric vehicle charging points. We've got reuse of water in the toilets. We've got, as I said before, lights on the roof of the buildings. There's a whole package of environmentally friendly measures that are proposed as part of this in order to minimise the impact on the environment. This isn't sort of a case of ignoring our obligations as an authority, as an applicant. And as far as we're concerned, it goes above and beyond what many types of applications of this nature would go to. And then I suppose the other point in terms of railway use, that isn't proposed as part of this application, which of course that is a sustainable way of transporting waste. But in order for it to be effective, it needs to be effective both in terms of importing waste and exporting waste. And I think the problem is that it's very difficult to do for a facility of this type. The waste is coming in from lots of different locations, and there aren't always linked up railway routes where you can actually do that. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just comment on that? Thanks for the about the solar panels and that. I obviously missed that. I heard about the skylights, but I missed the others. So that's good news, that is. And what I was really thinking about was when the waste had been sorted and it was being bulked and sent to places like Coventry. That was what I was thinking of, not coming in, because it's coming in from all over on dustbin lorries, but going out. But you know, it's just a wish, that is, really. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Well, I've run out of speakers on my list. Probably looking for a mover and a seconder for something anyway. You've seen the recommendation. It is recommended permit, but obviously it's up to members. Does anyone like to move anything at this time? To
move the recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Crooks.
I'll second it, Chairman.
Janice. Thank you. Well, we've got that on the table then. So what I was going to do is ask Ewan to read out the members' names and which way they're going to vote on it. It's been moved and seconded that it is permitted. So over to Ewan, please.
Thank you. So first on the list we have Mr. Bentley.
Yeah, 4.
Mr. Charlesworth.
4.
Mr. Coxon.
4.
Mr. Crooks.
4.
Mr. Gillard.
4.
Mr. Harrison.
Against.
Okay. Mr. Gamble.
Against.
Mr. Licorice.
4.
Mr. Parton hasn't joined the call, so he doesn't vote. And we've got Mrs. Richards.
4.
Mr. Sheehan.
4.
Mrs. Wright.
4.
And Mr. Wyatt.
Against.
So I make it that the motion is carried with a 7 in favour and 4 against.
Thank you, Ewan. That's what I made it. I think it's perhaps better to get it clear from you and asking it. That's item 7 finished then. Item 8 is delegated enforcement notice. This report is for the board to receive and note. Are there any questions from members on what we're receiving and noting?
No.
Item 9, as I've already said, there are no urgent items. Item 10 is future meetings. They're listed on the agenda, which is quite a long way away, 9th of December 21. Item 11, I have no announcements to make, so I'll draw the meeting to a close, and just to say thank you very much for tuning in, and see you next time, or hear you next time. Thank you very much.
Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman.
Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Goodbye.